Okay. Thresholds and off ramps. So this is a consent modality that I'm kind of playing with. Um, so consent is important to not take on trauma. And if you think of trauma as being anything that's too much too fast, or not anything, but it can come from anything too much too fast. Again, this is your mileage may vary. This is just as it is useful to me. Um, and so some things about consent is that it's like ongoing, which means that it has to be revocable. But in order for consent to be revocable, it has to be, you have to be able to get out of the situation at hand. So I came up with this concept of thresholds and off ramps. And when I say consent, I mean throughout your entire life, like various things. So this is good for like work. This is good for whatever, anything. A threshold is it's going to be anything that is a step you take that's harder to like extricate from, um, harder to get out of. For example, it could be, and you'll see that these are things that are worth doing in life. And let me draw a line. Fair enough. Like one threshold is like moving in with someone. A threshold could be signing a contract to do work, to do X piece of work. Let's say deliver. Oh my gosh, it is hard to type on stream. A threshold could be, it's a good threshold. Like anything. Changing your name. And what I realized is before, oh, getting a job as a cashier where you're expected to stay at the register no matter what happens. Yes, that's another one. That's a good one. Wonderful. Getting a job as a cashier at a, let's say, stationed at register. Oh, I love register breakdowns. Those are amazing. Yeah, that's like so wild. I don't love them, love them. I love that they're so wild and crazy, and I hate them. Okay. Off ramps. So before, and obviously, it can be a privilege to be able to opt into certain thresholds. If you are experiencing certain forms of non-privilege or whatever you might call that, like you may be forced to um, opt into thresholds through your assent, which is like you have to go along with it, going along with it, rather than your consent, which is like enthusiastic. Okay, so before consenting to cross the threshold, I find that it's very important to come up with the off ramps, um, which is like ways out, basically. It's so that you can like wrap up the so you can go to the threshold, try it out, you can exit. Again, it requires some privilege, it requires good positioning, but I think that you may have more flexibility than you think you might have. So before moving in with someone, a good off ramp would be planning how you could move out to a temporary place, including pricing it out. This one, as a side note, has actually gotten a lot easier with Airbnb. You can get monthly Airbnbs, same day. And if you're someone like me, like if I like to live with people, but also I have, um, I don't know that I'd call it sensitivities. I don't know if I call it picky, but it doesn't always work. I have high compatibility needs, um, and if it's not working out, I am the kind of person where just for me, I want to be in a different space, quick. I don't like to run out the clock on stuff like that. So I need to figure out like how much money and stuff it would take to be able to do that. That's an off ramp. Um, in fact, I'm going to make a little note that says plan these before entering threshold. This is going to be a longer wisdom. I like it though. And I'm also thinking in my head, like, I wanted to keep these professionalized so that I could have people look at them and think of me as a professional. And I'm like sitting here in a Santa hat with like a drawing on a. Anyway. I'm built with original cringe and original silly. Okay. Cannot not be silly. Signing a contract to deliver work. One way to off ramp this is if it's experimental work, you could write a clause of experimental explorative work may change during completion. You could also do just as like a fallback in case of failure, in case you think you might. Oh no, not even that. Not even that. But like, because you don't go into it thinking you'll fail. But for me, I do find that it's nice to don't cash the checks until the project is done and approved. Of course, you can see how that is also tied into having enough money to do that. I'll say so it's refundable in case of, let's call it, unforeseen circumstance. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I've been in the situation of having spent the like sort of advance money and then the project being much more involved than we thought. And like, there's been studies that show that like when you're building software, I mean, nobody can estimate software better than like 50% accuracy. So, yeah. And then changing your name, you can do this one's kind of easy. It's look up how to change it back before you change it. And then, oh, I love that. Excellent. Unclear marketing objectives or unseen difficulties can change project roadmaps. I mean, I might want to do another wisdom at some point about this contract one because you can also put in an arbitration clause, which says we're not going to sue each other. If it ever came down to it, we would get a third party arbitrator to tell us, you know, how to make it right. That way it just saves everybody. It doesn't just save everybody money, it saves everybody the threat of having to have money to spend doing that. Then there's, okay, so getting a job as a cashier station to register. This is a tough one. You might need to have savings so you can quit, which is, again, that's a hard one. But it's interesting because you might realize like, oh, I might be able to just quit. You might have more. The reason that we explore this stuff is because you might not have these resources, but you might have more resources than you think you do if you think of them a certain way. So, and then you can also do. Don't wear mascara. Don't wear mascara. Get nicer shoes. Yeah, get nicer shoes. At first, I thought you meant just more fancy, but like, let's see, comfy shoes. maybe look up and know your rights as a worker. Um, and oh yeah, maybe also something like keep looking at other opportunities. Interviewing? I don't know. Something like that. Anyway, I think this is a really like useful sort of um framework for consent that I've been honestly using because there's been things in my life that I'm afraid have been finding fear when I'm trying to engage in them. And that could be anything. You know, any part of your life could be dating, could be um starting a business, could be just whatever. Um and this lets you like this essentially lets you have agency in getting out of situations that are bad for you. So yeah, there you go. Thresholds and on ramps. That's your wisdom for tonight. Screenshot it, find it on the VOD,